So have you ever been reading the Gospels and wonder, why did Jesus only go to Israel? Why did he only go to the people of Israel? And why did he only minister in Palestine? Why is it that Jesus doesn't go anywhere else? Why isn't it that he doesn't go to Egypt and minister there? Or why doesn't he go elsewhere in the Roman Empire? Why did Jesus only go to Israel in his ministry? What is it about specifically his calling that means he only goes to Israel? Well, we're going to explore this in this video. So why did Jesus only go to Israel? So why doesn't Jesus, for instance, go to Athens? I mean, Athens or Ephesus or Corinth, these were the major centers of commerce. Jesus could have reached a whole heap of more people if he went to Ephesus or Corinth. And why didn't Jesus go to Rome? I mean, Rome was the center of political power in the Roman Empire. So why is it that Jesus doesn't go to Rome? If Jesus wants his message to be heard, why not do it where the most people are? Why is it that when Gentile people seek Jesus out, Jesus is sort of hostile towards them or ignores them? So for instance, the Gentile woman in Mark 7:24-30 seeks out Jesus, seeking for her daughter to be healed. And Jesus seems quite flippant with her, saying, I don't really want to. I'm not called to heal your daughter. And what about in John 12:20-29, when some Greeks come to speak to Jesus and Jesus says, no, he doesn't really talk to them at all, and essentially says, I've not come to minister to them. And why is it then, however, that Jesus then calls his disciples to go out into the world? So Jesus doesn't go out into the world. Jesus only goes to Israel. But then why is it that Jesus then sends his disciples to all the nations, to the Gentiles, to the ends of the earth? So to understand what's going on, we've actually got to go back to Genesis and uncover what is Israel's special purpose in the plan of God. Because Israel does have a very particular special purpose in the plan of God. Now, Genesis 1 and 2 talk about the creation of the world. And these accounts introduce us to this idea of creational monotheism. Creational monotheism. And that's essentially two things. That there is one God, and this God created everything. Now that might seem simple to you and I, but to the people of the ancient Near East, this was quite an unusual thing. In their world, there was many gods often in conflict with one another. And so read against that backdrop, Genesis 1 and 2 is quite striking that there's only one God. One, theism, God. So monotheism is this idea that there was one God. Now, also in the ancient Near East world, when we're looking at the gods, they were often associated with creation. So you'd have the god of the wind, or the god of the land, or the god of fertility, or the god of the sky, of rain, of sea. All of these different gods associated with all these different attributes of creation. And again, what's striking about Genesis 1 and 2 is that God isn't associated with a particular type or a particular aspect of creation. That this God we see in Genesis 1 is somehow transcendent of creation, but immanently present within creation. And so we get this idea of God being the creator God, the only God that creates. And so then the question becomes, well, if there is this one God, if there's not many gods, if there's only one God that's created everything, why is there evil in this world? And so if God is immanently involved in creation, then why is there evil? And what we see is that actually Genesis begins to answer this question. And you see, Genesis begins to answer this question, and it begins by the promises that God makes to Abraham. You see, Abraham is the divine answer to the problem of Adam, that Adam brought sin into the world, and Abraham, the blessings brought to Abraham, are the divine answer for the evil that was brought into the world by Adam. And also, through Abraham, the nations, the world, everyone, all people will be blessed. So we have this idea of Creator God coming and creating the whole world. But then there's the question, well, what about evil? Why is there evil in the world? And the divine answer to this, why is there evil, is Abraham. Abraham and his descendants were going to be God's vessel through which evil would be defeated and the nations would be blessed. So the descendants of Abraham, that is Israel, are God's chosen people to defeat evil and to bless the nations. So if we come back to this question, why did Jesus only go to Israel? Well, we see that in the late monarchy, after King David and Solomon and generations down, what happens is Israel itself is corrupted by evil and it needs saving. Right? It becomes corrupted by evil and it essentially is judged. It's judged initially. The northern kingdom, Israel, is judged by the Assyrians coming in and exiling the northern kingdoms. And then after this, about 150 years or so after, we see the Babylonians come through and exile the southern kingdom. And this is quite tragic because Israel is meant to be the vessel through which God defeats evil and blesses the nation. But Israel itself had become corrupted. So in this period of exile, there is this belief that arises that God will come back and restore Israel. And God will come back and restore Israel so that God can defeat all evil through Israel. And you see, this is what Jesus' mission was. Jesus' mission was to go back to Israel, restore God's chosen vessel to defeat evil and bless the nations so that evil could be defeated and that the nations could be blessed. And that is why Jesus' disciples are then called to the nations, because Jesus has restored this vessel through which God will work. Now the nations can be blessed. And so this is why Jesus goes to Israel. He goes to Israel to restore an ancient vessel, the people of Abraham, who were meant to be God's instrument to defeat evil and bless the nations. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, like this video, and if you want to catch more of these videos, subscribe. Thanks.